Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, made by Bob, is there a second? I'll second. Made by Bob, seconded by, Stephen. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, anyone from the public? I don't think anyone signed up. Anyone from the public have anything they would like to contribute? Okay.
Yeah,
All right, come up here and, just state your name and your address, and we'd be glad to hear from you.
Hi, Wade Obliger with Lake Lure Racing and the rowing team been on the lake. Just wanted to make you aware, we've have some proposals in with the LAB, and one of the proposals we are in with them, and hopefully will be forwarded on to you soon, is the proposal to have a regatta on the lake this fall. We're trying to, initially a targeted date in September, September 21, but we're now concerned about the traffic on the lake with the rowing boats out there. So we're considering moving the location or the timing to somewhere in November if we can. The downside of that is we'll probably lose some attendance, but we're going to try to save what we can. But we've had good interest, and the plan is to put a marathon race on. We've had interest from 2 clubs over in High Point, Atlanta, 2 clubs out of Charlotte, and 1 in Columbia, South Carolina so far, and then also over in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. So we've got the core of a nice good event to introduce people to Lake Lure and the rowing activity here on the lake, and that's a building block for us going forward. So just wanted you to be aware that it's rumbling around in the background, and will hopefully soon show up for you. So.
Well, that's exciting. How far is the marathon?
It'd be 26.2. So the course that I've worked out at this point is basically, the idea is to do a beach launch right in front of the inn, run the buoy lines up towards Rumbling Bald, buoy line back out down to the bridge and loop around the bridge and then straight back in. Cutting it off the first time should give us around, I think we can work it to somewhere in the mid 8 mile row there, and that would be, if people do the full marathon, it'd be about a three times, and the third time they'll come on into the shore. So we're looking at different options, and it's exciting. We've got everything from 8th grade team to High Point University, and then some adult clubs that are looking at coming over, which is really nice. So
What size boats?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, John.
No, you're right. You got the question.
Oh, what size boats?
It would. I think most will be an 8-person or a 4-person boat, just because of the length of the race. Most people like to do it with the team, but we'll be open to single and double boats as well. We do have a couple of kayakers on the lake who have shown interest in competitive too, so we possibly have some kayaks in there as well. Okay. So anything with an oar and a floating can give it a shot. So. Okay. So generally they run about the same as a running marathon. It'd be the fastest boats will probably finish in about 3.5 hours. A slow boat somewhere in 5. So the idea is to launch by 7 a.m. and have everybody finished up by noon. So
Okay, good.
that's what we're doing.
Good, thank you.
We appreciate it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, the only thing we have on the agenda today as far as new or old business is to have discussion of lowering the lake. When we're gonna lower it? Every 3 years? Not at all? Every 10 years? Who is, Dean, are you? Okay.
This came up a couple years ago. LAB had talked about it. I think some of the chatter came up to the Marine Commission. It was never actually decided on or put into place. I think there was not an urgency when we had talked about it the first time, because we had a couple of years before we decided what we were going to do. That generated other talks that really didn't go very many places. Well, now we're kind of running out of time, and I've been questioned quite a bit about what's the lake going to do this year. As far as is it going down, we have property owners. If it is going down, They need to be getting, permits and stuff from the state. That's generally a 60 to 90-day turnaround to get their permits. So permitting time would be coming up pretty soon, so that kind of prompted me to bring it back to the LAB and let's get a decision to what we thought we needed to do with the lake level. With the lake, when we take the lake level down, there's many negatives or cons to it. The loss of hydroelectric generation, that could be as much as $100,000 a month. There's damage to boathouses, there's damage to shoreline, and there's damage to sewer system. In regards of leaving the lake up, you avert all of that, and seawalls, boathouses and such can be worked on with the lake up. And at our LAB meeting, one of the local contractors, he's here today, Jonathan Hinkle, confirmed that seawall repair, boathouse repair and stuff can be up. Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was asked the question, do you prefer the lake to be down to do this work, or do you prefer the lake to be up to do this work? And he said it didn't really matter. He said, if it's up, let it stay up. If it's down, let it stay down, long as it's consistent of what they're, during the time period of them doing the work. I do believe that the contractors do prefer the lake up if they had a choice. The concerns of the LAB was at the, comparing the pros and cons. Their recommendation to you guys is to not lower the lake on any cycle. Let the lake lowering be determined by this board if it's to fix the lake for our responsibility of the town. If it's something to do with a dam, or if it's some kind of critical infrastructure, then let this council make the decision to lower the lake for the repairs needed, but not up to the individual property owners and stuff for them to do seawall work and stuff. Is something that they can do with the lake up.
Okay, did, with the other contractors, I'm sure you did contact other contractors.
I've talked to several other contractors, not all of them.
I actually spoke to Jay Freeman this morning. I asked him if he could come to the meeting. He had some big stuff going, couldn't, but I talked to him for at length, and his opinion was he understood both sides, letting it down or keeping it up. And for some of the stuff he does, he would be better off if it was down, but he could make it work if necessary, if need be. And, you know, people we're looking at, hopefully, we've talked about it a lot in LAB, of finding other methods, other processes to go get away from poured walls and those kind of things. So we just should be getting better and better in order to not have to have it down. There will be some projects where it probably would be necessary, but you know, those may have to wait a year or so to.
Yeah. So when we let it down, we're not making any electricity at all, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
They lose the ability to make hydro. And the last time we had the lake down, it did quite a bit of damage to the sewer system. It even
Yeah.
had a manhole completely fall over.
Go ahead.
And then we have several residents that, depending on what level we bring it to, it affects different residents of how the wave action eats away at their piers and pilings in their boathouses.
Yeah, I had two different people contact me about that.
Yeah.
Dredging, excuse me, Bob, dredging is another thing that it affects drastically, the ability to be able to dredge.
What's
Bob,
this
you
going, you know, what's this going to do with new sewer lines? We're still 3 or 4 years away. How's anybody going to tie a home in with ductile pipe to get it over to a manhole or anything like that? I mean, I've run one, John's run one, and the only way you can run that one's with it down. And that's my only concern, is that there's just, when I see people at 3 years out, it might be able to go 4 years, but you see this group of people start coming up, and then the contractors say, my gosh, I can't get it all done in just 3 months. So wherever window we pick, it's just like David, when he goes to do his inspections, some of these plastic lines are in the water, they're broken. The only way you can get to them is with the water down. So my concern is pick a number, but it's got to go down sometime for, otherwise you're not gonna be able to tie in some new houses, so
Right.
you'll just be blocked out. So there's that balance we're looking for, and, so, I mean, it's just like David's work, the one manhole that they had the problem with, because we went down so far and
Right.
stayed there till the wash finally took it out, but,
Well, the recommendation is if it's town problem, if it's town work, stuff that the town needs to take care of, they can take it down at will. And, the only question is if you wanna have a time period, whether it be 3 years, 5 years, 10, whatever, then, you know, by all means, this board create that
No, that's-
timeline and,
that's what I'm saying with
Yeah.
discussion, is just, we need to pick a number where, there's
Right.
just certain things, I mean, if you say right now, you're not gonna take it down for 5 years, there's people who wanna build a home, they're gonna have to wait 5 years to run their sewer line. And our project here for the low pressure system be at least that long, and so what do those people do? So
right.
we gotta find that balance for both sides, and I understand that, I appreciate it.
If I may, this year will be the third year since we last lowered it for any significant time to where people could do work. Now, everybody knows that having a lake structure or a boathouse on this lake is not a right, it's a privilege. The town has given permission over the years for these folks to build these structures.
Yes, sir.
I don't think it'd be wise of us to set such a standard that they can't maintain them practically, okay? We want them maintained, we want them in good shape. It's more of a tax benefit for the town that way. Yes, when the lake is lowered, you lose some money. But are we also saving some by protecting the properties that are out there? Do we make ourselves liable in any way by not lowering it and making their ability to repair more difficult? And one question I would ask of Jonathan, the only contractor here, is when you do if you say, for instance, the exact same job with the water down versus with the water up, does it cost the property owner more to do it that way? And that's a direct question to you. So, well, yeah, or whatever.
I'm Jonathan Hinkle, Marathon Builders, 268 Firefly Cove. I think it would depend on the process you're talking about. If you're talking about building a boathouse, I don't think that the process up or down is gonna affect the cost. But if you're talking about a seawall, the process being up or down, the process of being down would be lower because of not having to build cofferdams. Any other repair, I don't,
Yeah, because for a boathouse or a dock or a deck, you can drive the pilings,
that's correct.
correct? But, so it doesn't cost a property owner more to repair an existing dock or a deck with the water up than it would with it down?
Well, let's say that, you're gonna jack up a boathouse that's sinking and you need to jack it up. If the water level's here and we have to work down here because the lake's down, it's easier to work the pile down here, but it's harder to work the dock. And vice versa, if you're trying to make the repair down here, it's harder to work down here when the lake is up and easier when the lake is down. But, it's,
Building
make
coffer-
diving.
the
That's why we-
cofferdams, I understand, are
yeah,
pretty expensive.
we've got, Eric, certified diver, so he makes those repairs
All right.
all the time without having the lake levels affect that. And we have scuba gear that we work in and,
So there is additional cost,
well,
obviously.
I think there's a varying cost. I don't know that it would be of great expense, one way or another unless it was a seawall. And, and then the seawalls, the Department of Water Quality, they really don't want seawalls on this lake.
Yeah, and I understand that, and I get that, and
Yeah.
I appreciate Commissioner Kilby's comment on that. But the point is, in some spots on this lake, because of the steepness of the terrain, it's absolutely necessary to protect the home.
In some
There's
spots,
others
yes.
that have a lot of leeway and can do just riprap and have a decent shoreline.
Yeah, that's correct.
So, but yeah, there are exceptions.
I wonder, I was thinking about this, this afternoon, in situations like that, that's, when that process starts, does that come, pardon my ignorance, but does that come, Shannon, does that come to Brad, those plans for that? Is that where it starts for seawall and things like that? And, you know, maybe we get into a situation where when somebody wants, something like that done, we start there and look at what the options are. And, you know, and look for the option, hopefully, for it to be able to be done without having the lake down. Maybe we don't set a 2-year, 3-year, 5-year. It's, you know, it's on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, well, you know, there is another issue with the lake being down. With the lake being down, the town does not have deep water access. So, you know, if you get out there, I don't know, maybe 40 or 50 feet, wherever Tim stopped dredging, it's about 2 feet deep. So if we don't continue to dredge that far out, and, you know, there's nowhere that people can get in and out of.
So your
The point.
mobility and capability of getting to a site has changed. with
Right,
water down.
so let's just say that I know that coming into the lake being drawn down, and I bring all my materials over before the lake is drawn down, wait for it to be drawn down, and then make the repairs. Well, anything extra that may need would have to come in by land, which isn't necessarily impossible, but, you know, in some places it's very difficult. But there's only one deep water access at this point, and it's privately owned. So, you know, you can't work out of there. So that's one major problem of the lake being down, which should probably be figured out.
And another question back to Dean on the permitting issue. Of course, we would do a town permit for things like concrete and water, which we now know doesn't need to be done. Is there still a need for the Department of Water Quality to be involved in the permitting process for all of these lake structures in general? Like it was when we were doing a blanket permit for everybody?
There is, and I'm actually getting that permit process worked on right now, to where if you are a homeowner and come up and say, hey, I wanna build a seawall, I can hand them a piece of paper and it'll tell them exactly what departments and what permits they need to do their specific type of job.
Okay, it's a seawall. What about a boathouse? What about docks, decks, a boardwalk, other lake structures?
That would go through Brad.
Huh?
It would go through Brad.
Structure.
So no need for DWQ unless it's a seawall.
I don't know that question. That's what I'm getting worked on to have
Is there a
developed
reason,
right now.
I heard the comment made that we don't do a blanket permit anymore, since Clint left. Is there a reason for that?
Clint did all the permitting for the town, and right now I have him actually laying all that permit process out for what we need to do. The only thing that blanket permit saved the homeowner, from what my understanding is it saved them a $250 fee for each person coming on. And generally, there's, you know, I don't know how many people come on each year or each time that we end up doing that. And that is something that I don't see why the town can't still do it if that's the desire of council. I'm just getting that process laid out now, because when Clint did leave, he took that knowledge with him. And now I'm getting that, I'm in the process right now of getting that knowledge back to the
So
town.
wouldn't he have had a file or something on that where he would have the forms that he filled out and sent in?
I'm sure he does, but
Wouldn't that be town property?
it is town property. But
Okay.
if you look at the files that Clint left behind, it would fill this room up just about it. It just, I don't know where I'm looking and what I'm looking for. So he's making me a list right now of exactly what forms and what we have to do. So
Okay.
to fast track it, I guess, so that I can see exactly what I need to get and what I need to do.
Yeah, I think that was awfully convenient for folks around town to have that blanket permit, and,
Right.
it saved them, in addition to the $250, it saved them having to deal with it, and a lot of
Right.
people, probably don't know they're supposed to do that, find out when it's too late.
I'd like to see that continue.
Yeah, we.
Brad, did you have something you wanted to say, Brad?
No, I was gonna be available.
I have a question for Brad.
Hold on.
I mean, did I cut you off?
No, we get David next.
Huh?
We get David next.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Do we have houses now that are, or people who want to build a house now that are waiting for the lake to go down to tie into the sewer?
At this time, I have not had any conversations with anyone. I've got a seawall, a partial seawall repair that is waiting for the lake to come down, but it's also in concert with a shoreline stabilization effort, which they're going ahead and continue with. And they've just said, we're gonna wait till the lake comes down. They're not pressuring, have not said anything. I've got another project where a seawall is gonna have to be repaired. But they're hung up, they've got another imbroglio they're dealing with. But I've not had any direct contact with anyone.
If, these two seawalls that you're talking about, I don't know where they are, if the lake didn't come down, would they be able to put the riprap up, or are they too steep where that wouldn't work?
No, they could do it.
They could
At
do
both
that?
of these locations, they could do it. Yeah.
Would you know if there were people who needed to tie into sewer but can't do it because the lake hasn't come down?
I would yeah, Linda and I we're pretty tight when it comes to that sort of thing. So I would have had some communication along those lines, and I've not heard anything.
Nobody
from
this
anybody.
year.
Not yet.
Okay, well, I can see how that could happen.
Sure.
But it would,
Well, remember, we may get to the point where they don't go in the lake to begin with. You know,
Yeah.
it may be that somebody's gonna have to consider a pump and, you know, some other alternative to, we don't know.
I'm just thinking out loud. I don't know what the best thing to do is here, but what do y'all think about the possibility of, setting a time to bring it down and say, this may be the last time we bring it down? If you've got something to do, we're revisiting this, take it down every 3 years program. And there are lakes, I know there are lakes in other parts of the country that they can't let up and down, that are natural lakes, that they have boathouses on and, things around the shore. So, the things can be done. It's just, how much trouble it is. But that, we're wanting to direct that, lay out the reasons that we've talked about today here, the erosion and the fact that, we're losing, probably 75,000 a month while we do it, that we could be using on dredging. And, maybe pick a year, or it's next year, or whatever it is, and say, okay, we're gonna let it down then, but we may not let it down anymore after that. I'm asking my
Well,
friends here,
That's a viable option. And I was thinking for the near term, that we make a decision tonight to not lower it this year, so everybody knows. And at our September Marine Commission Council meeting, schedule a public hearing on the matter, because this is such a major shift in policy from what we've been doing for so long. And we've got a very limited audience here. And I just feel like we should try to bring in more
Yeah.
of the public for the
I agree
public
with that.
hearing on it.
But I think we should call it something other than a public hearing, because a public hearing has a different connotation. I mean, it should be a
Public input session.
public input session, yeah.
Okay.
It's just
Okay.
because public.
Yeah, I'm not hung up on the name, I mean, that was my line of thinking,
Yeah, I
and
think that's a good
then in
idea.
September.
I'd like to get David's input, if we could, what effect it has on Public Works. He's sitting back there too comfortable, we need to,
He just likes Dave.
yeah. Knowing with the
Well, no, but
sewer pipes,
Next year, this year wasn't a scheduled year to bring it down,
I
was it?
think
no,
it
this
is.
year was.
This year.
We couldn't determine that at LAB the other day, I'm not sure.
Dean, is this the,
I'm believing it is.
That the 2019 is when we were scheduled to bring it down.
It went down scheduled 15 and 16.
Well, 1 year.
So,
Yeah, one went down, but wasn't scheduled.
so it should be 18, 19. Well, it should have been this past year, but we had so many ups and downs through the storms.
it 2 years in a row last time for.
We felt like we were on a roller coaster.
Okay, David, what's your input on these sewer lines and the PVC sewer lines and all this stuff?
Well, I mean, it's a constant battle, any way you go about it. If it's something that we can find and access, I've had Eric Kunith come out numerous times and help us when the water was up. But you're gonna have those situations where a bottom is busted in a manhole and stuff like that, where we had to have Myron Step come in and remove the manhole. And if stuff like that happens, then I'm gonna be coming before you and ask to lower the lake.
But that wouldn't require 2 months.
No, like we done before,
That's
we
it,
pulled,
as needed.
yeah, we
Down,
pulled it
fix it
down,
up.
they went in there and busted it up, got it stubbed up above the water level, and we brought the lake back up. But there will be times that stuff's gonna happen, so.
I just want to get your input, because it
Right.
affects you. so-
Yeah, it does, but as long as when something major happens, we can take care of it, and I think that's what Dean and everybody's saying. I don't see a problem with it.
See, I go back to what I heard Brad say a minute ago. We've got 2 people that he knows of that have seawalls that need repair. But they could be repaired with riprap.
Well,
Which,
you've asked my opinion, and I'm gonna.
now, I understand, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
if we can, and Brad, come back up if if I misunderstood what you said,
And I may have taken what was said out of context. I've got 2 seawalls that need repair. Both of them are new construction seawalls, and the riprap application that I thought was being referred to was the stabilization, materials that are required at the toe of that wall. And because both of these are in shallow areas in the backs of coves, it would be easy to accommodate the placement of that riprap. But this is a new seawall construction. So the lake's either going to have to be down or they're going to have a coffer dam to build.
I thought the only requirement for riprap on a seawall was in the main channel, where you have all that wave action.
Both of these sets of plans are incorporating
Oh,
it.
okay.
So,
Okay.
they're signed and sealed,
So
so
so these walls need foundations and then,
I think so, yes.
Yeah,
I think so.
One of you had mentioned earlier about new homes, repairs and stuff. Quite frequently, people are coming in and talking to Linda. Just yesterday, I think it was, Linda asked me about a homeowner, that septic system was failing and wanted to know how they could get to our manhole to tie in, wanted us to grant permission, and I told them that we couldn't grant them permission. They would have to go to all the property owners that adjoin them to get to our manhole without the lake being down. And he said, well, my system is failing. And I said, well, as it is right now, the lake is up. And then, as long as the lake's up, you're gonna have to get permission from the adjoining property owners to be able to tie to our system, because we as a town cannot grant somebody permission to cross somebody else's property.
so let's say those property owners don't give that, and his system fails, what does he do?
I don't have the answer
And
to
are
that.
we
Yeah.
making that situation worse for that homeowner?
That's what
That's what I'm getting at.
well, there again, I think that'd be a case-by-case scenario.
That could be.
That'd
one
be
of
a
the-
down, get
Yep.
your sewer line in and back up.
That could be one of the circumstances where you say, hey, we're gonna allow
Yeah.
3 days. We're gonna pull this down for 3 days. You got 3 days to get it in and bring it back up or whatever. I mean, but that could be a case by case basis, but
Well,
stuff like that does exist.
Does that call for, permit from, whoever to do that? I know when I did mine, that was a long time ago, I had to get all that permitted and drawn and, surveyed and all that.
Mr. Odom
Has to
takes
be
care of that.
engineered.
Yeah.
Yep, it has
Been
to
there,
be
done that.
engineered.
all right, well, all right, if we've got that, and we've got a couple seawalls, and I'm sure when the water's down, you guys wanna make a quick inspection,
Yes.
go around.
Yes.
So, it might make sense to, in the dead of winter, like, bring it down, or say we're gonna bring it down for a couple of weeks, cause we got these 5 or 6 jobs to do. And, get those done, and
Yeah.
bring it back up.
Mr.
And-
Helms has some thoughts.
Maybe.
Come on up, we want to get you to.
Should I talk here or what?
Yeah, but
Thank
we'll
you.
only,
I'm
you can
not
talk
still
there,
there.
we'll only listen if you're over here.
Okay, I got you.
Art Helms, 232 Firefly Cove. My one question, we all talk about dropping the lake, but how much are we talking about? One of the things I never thought about was Bob talking about hooking up sewer lines to manholes. But what level do we need to drop the lake to do that?
Usually we've been doing that at
I
a
think
normal 6
it would
foot.
depend on,
6 foot.
Right.
yeah, what we're talking about right now, I think it would depend on what the job was. If you've got, like say, you maybe need 3 feet or 5 feet, whatever you
Yeah.
need to
Well,
do
they
this.
get them
but-
down to the shoreline to be able to do what was engineered,
Right,
you know.
and, we could keep again, I'm thinking out loud,
No, that's
I may
great.
say something stupid, but I know you guys will let me know if I do.
Sure.
It may be that we keep a running, list somewhere of people wanting the lake taken down for whatever reason. And then council or Marine Commission decides from that list is to a point, well, we've got one thing here, it's a real emergency. Or we got some things here that, well, yeah, it's not that big deal, it could wait a little longer. And we bring it down, let them fix those things, and they get fixed, we bring it back up as soon as
Just
we can.
help. We could even test it this year and just say 30 days in December. Something like that, or January, and just say for 30 days. This way this guy could get a sewer line, he could get their foundations and footers out of the water, and
Well,
do it just flat, dead of winter.
You drop it 5 feet, 6
Right.
feet. It's gonna take a week to dry out enough to do anything,
That's true.
if the weather's good.
Right.
And then the winter was when we have some of the wet and cold.
Right.
It doesn't dry very fast.
Yep, we know about that.
So, it happens.
I hate to agree with Steve, and I'll never do that unless I had to, but
We hate.
in our
That's
meetings,
okay. It's noted.
well, if it's true, then, but in our meetings, contractors are always asking for 2 weeks, that you can't give a head nod. That
Right.
if you bring it down, they need 2 weeks for it to even dry out, for you not to be knee deep in muck.
Okay, I agree, yep, because it's gotta leach
And I mean,
back
once
out.
we do it, we always say, oh, 1 month's good, but then we always have somebody showing up, we're not done yet, it's rained, it's snowed,
Even if we had a public input meeting that I mentioned before, the reality is, every time we drop that lake, they might have 5 permits, but you're gonna have 100 people out there working on their boathouses and this stuff, doing something.
Yeah.
It never fails.
Worth making a mention is, also the polar plunge happens at New Year's.
Yeah, we wouldn't wanna do December.
Right.
Yeah, I don't
Do it
think-
after the polar plunge or something.
And after we dropped the last time, raise it up back down.
Can we refresh my memory as far as what depth it goes down before we stop losing power? Is that, or, because we can still run power at what level?
Yeah, down to 5 or 6 foot somewhere.
it's fine.
I'm not sure exactly, but in that area, it goes to drawing so much air in with water.
I think
Doing
that's
more
why
damage
we,
than
I
good.
think that's why we were only dropping it 4.5 to 5 feet for so many years,
Yeah.
the years that we did it.
Right.
They stopped doing it at 16 feet. They stopped doing it every year.
Another one, not my committee's opinions, but another one of my personal opinions is that 5 and 6 feet down is where it usually sits about halfway down on people's boathouses, and it just eats up pilings. And last time we did that I went around and looked, and there's a whole lot of them that got a lot of damage from that. So that's kind of, yes, people get to repair theirs at their own place on the weekends, but theirs and everybody else's are also getting.
I mean, I definitely agree, there's a lot of pros and cons to either direction.
But we gotta be able.
I mean,
to
unless
let
we
them
drop
do
it just 6, unless we drop it all the way down to where it's below everybody's stuff.
It sounds like things that need to be done tend to accumulate. And I think it might be, a good idea to let that list get to a point that we, well, okay, we really need to bring it down now, we've got this many things to do. And, that may do it 2 years in a row, you may not do it again for several years.
that
Just
idea is
depending on
just,
what it is.
you know, like a sewer line, like this guy,
Yeah.
he doesn't have a choice. I mean, he's not, gonna-
Right.
people aren't gonna lane, if he can dig across, which a lot of these houses are so steep, you can't stand on them, much less dig on them. So
So what do we do in the meantime, right now?
my recommendation would be to lower it after the polar plunge and bring it back up the second or third week of February as a test, just to try.
Are we still gonna have our, public input meeting next?
Yeah, I'd like to hear other opinions.
I'd like to
Yep.
try to get more public
Yep.
input.
I
Yeah,
agree.
if we're gonna do that, why don't we do that?
September.
Just
Why don't we
hold
do
off
that
on our
first?
Yeah, I
decision.
agree.
And in the meantime, Dean, you're gonna push forward on getting that blanket permit.
Is our next meeting next month?
September.
Not till September.
Right. And
Is that
We
gonna
could
work?
do it- We could do it next month if we, you know, if we want, there's no reason it has to be in September as opposed to next month.
If we wait till September, then we're gonna have to get into delaying contractors if we realize we have to do it and projects. I'm just,
Well, but his solution would take care of that if we did it for January and February, after the polar plunge. That's a decision for today, so they know what to do. And then the discussion in September is the policy.
I
So-
think if we decide today that we're gonna lower it in January or February, that we need to stick with that. We don't need to, if we, I mean, we have a, and it may not, and we may even wanna wait till later to have the, public meeting because, I mean, the input session, because if we decide we're gonna do it now, we don't wanna decide we're not gonna do it in another month.
so do we have enough projects that we know or people are wanting to do to go ahead and commit to taking it down in January?
Brad's got the two seawalls, I've got one sewer issue over here. Those are the only ones we know.
The sewer issue is the big thing, and you say there aren't any, Brad, you say there aren't any, houses that can't get, that need to hook Brad first.
He can't hear you.
He can't hear you with me, so.
I've gotten too comfortable, Brad Burton. You say there aren't any houses that are, other than this one sewer issue that was mentioned, there aren't any other houses or lots that are needing to tie into the sewer so they can build or do whatever?
Not that I'm aware of, this.
Okay. You know something, Jonathan?
I'll just plain devil's advocate. What happens when you drop the lake and you adversely create other projects because you did drop the lake? You create other sewer problems, other roadhouse problems, then now you drop the lake for an experiment and create
Yeah.
problems to where you gotta drop the lake again to fix those problems.
Then we find a contractor that can predict the future and take care of those things beforehand.
Okay, so then, on the devil's advocate side of it too, is that these permitting processes are not quick processes. These are, you're talking about Army Corps of Engineers, you're talking about Division of Water Quality, you're talking about engineering or architectural designs that have to be done. That permitting process and design process can take up to 3 months. So if you have your meetings, your input meeting by latest September, then by earliest October, they need to start that process and have it completed in December to be able to start that project.
Maybe something was lost. We weren't, based on Bob's suggestion, we were not talking about waiting until after September to decide to lower it this year or not. We were talking about deciding today to lower it January after a polar plunge till about the second or third week of February.
So-
That would be a decision today.
Right.
The public input would be in September to discuss the long-term policy.
Okay, I got you.
That's what my intent was, and I gathered from what Bob was saying.
I'm okay with
The
that.
other thing
I
is
just
that
think we need to do that.
what John said earlier, Commissioner Moore, said was about the public input, it's letting people know this may be the last time. And we can put that out with this
Right.
notice, that it would go down in January after polar plunge until February. And tell them then, this may be the last time there is a public input meeting
yeah.
in September. We could do that.
Also, keep in mind, depending on how low the lake goes, could affect the dredging process, because it's hydraulically dredged. If we don't have water for the dredge to move around, then it'll be out of service. However, we just saying,
Yeah.
keep in mind, there's a window that may.
Yeah, it just limits it for that month or two, and we can still do it year-round other than that.
Dean,
So
if he,
really, that impact is not as great as it used to be, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I interrupted. If he knew that we were doing this, could he dig himself a hole before we drop the lake so we would have some operating space?
If that holdup caved in on it.
Okay.
Once you lower the lake, the sediment stuff wants to pull together,
Right.
hydraulic pressure,
Gotcha.
and if it closes in on them, it's game over till.
Once you dig it, just build 4 seawalls, man. Hold it there.
Okay, I think we have consensus on that. You good with that, John?
Well, I still go back to, I think we need to be sure we've got projects people wanna do before we commit to that. It's my feeling.
The only problem is, it's just like Jonathan said, if we wait, they gotta wait on their permit.
Well, I'm not saying, Wayne, I say we have a public input meeting next month, before September, and start there, making sure we've got people that need projects done.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I know it's gotta be next month, yeah.
Okay.
It
We'll
is
meet-
a squeeze in,
We'll meet again, just continue this meeting
right?
on till, 4 o'clock, second Tuesday of August,
Right.
at which time we will dig further.
Take public input.
And take public input on,
We can recess and reconvene.
Yeah, you can recess that meeting
yeah,
until
that's
then,
what I'm.
instead of
that's what I'm
adjourning
doing.
today.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, is that what we wanna do?
Let's do it.
Everybody good? Okay, somebody make that motion.
Wait,
Well, I'm-
you need to set a specific date.
Yeah,
Well, it's the second Tuesday, whatever date that is.
The 13th.
Okay. All right, so we'll recess this meeting till,
4 PM.
Tuesday, 4 PM, Tuesday,
August 13th.
August 13th. And at that time, we'll continue our discussion of, when and how much to
With
lower the
public-
lake.
With public input.
Public
With
input.
public, we're seeking public input at, 4 PM on second Tuesday in August. You get that, Dean?
Yes, sir.
Make that motion.
Huh?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Okay, so we are recessed.
I'll make the motion that we,
No, we're
What?
recessed.
No.
no, I'm talking about for the final meeting.
Huh?
Oh, we're continuing this one
Yeah.
to the,
Yeah,
okay.
this is
All right,
recess.
Just recess on, okay.
Yeah.
Take my glory
Don't
over
you know that?
Yeah,
We're done.
we're done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For 15 more minutes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good deal.
Take a nap.